Howard Jr., everybody. Welcome into some Week 11 fantasy football lineup advice. In this episode, I'll be breaking down 5 running backs that I'm looking to sit in this week's games. I think there's some tough matchup situations unfolding and at play here, and I'm looking to go other directions and explore other options for my lineups here in Week 11. So as always, I've got my start and sit videos out for both running backs and receivers. Make sure to check out any of the episodes you have not seen yet after watching this one. We've got a Week 11 playlist up on the channel live right now, so you can find all of those videos and get access to that stuff there instantly after you're done watching this segment. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's dive into our first player. All right, I talked about this in the wide receiver segment as well, but what we usually do to start off these episodes is break down and recap our picks from the week prior. But as I said in that episode, we actually didn't post a sit running back segment last week. I just was super busy and didn't get around to it. So nothing to recap in this episode. We did post starts last week though, so you can go check those out and recap how we did in those picks. We did very well in the running back segment for week 10. So again, that is in the start running back segment for week 11 that is on the channel right now. So we're going to dive right into our first situation, our first sit of the week, that being Daryl Henderson. And this Rams overall offense is something I've really wanted to talk about here after having some Matthew Stafford injuries and moving into now Cooper Kupp surgery that's going to have him on the injured reserve out the next 4 games at least, and kind of putting his season in jeopardy here. If this team goes south, we may not see him again this season if they choose to shut him down. Now, the trend technically now, this is somewhat joking, but also somewhat serious. Based on the risk we've seen Sean McVay put Cooper Kupp in harm's way multiple times this year after getting his ankle twisted earlier in the season and then late in the game down multiple scores, having him out there and injuring his ankle this time around. It is very possible that he suits him back up and throws him out in the lineup, but I think that if the season is lost within the next 4 games or whenever he can return here off IR, the soonest being week 14, actually week 15 after 4 games there, I believe, weeks 11 through 14, he should be mandated to be out based on the injury reserve designation there. But if the season's lost, we may not see him. So diving into actual running back analysis now, talking through Daryl Henderson, this overall offense takes such a blow from losing Cooper Kupp, not only as a receiver and the attention he draws to the defense. This guy's a hell of a blocker too. He adds a lot to the team in the run game and brings a lot to the table for this offense. So it is a loss that can't go without, overstating here. Matt Stafford is going to miss him critically in big spots in every contest moving forward. The run game, like I said, he literally blocks like a tight end out there and moves people out of the way. This run game to begin with has been kind of a committee-style system as of late. Daryl Henderson has not been the true lead back here, although he has been the lead back. It's been kind of a dicey situation. So there is red flags, concerns, reasons for pessimism here all over the table. And I just think that at New Orleans, coming off of a bad loss against the Pittsburgh team, this is a tough road environment to play in with a terrible offensive line. I think they're outmatched in the front 7. I hate this matchup from top to bottom and don't want anything to do with Henderson in my lineups here. Michael Carter, the Jets at New England this week. I looked at week 8 here. So the Jets are coming off of a bye right now as well as the Patriots. I looked at week 8, the first game post Breece Hall injury prior to acquiring James Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars close to the trade deadline, and Michael Carter was not all that impressive. He averaged just 3.74 yards per carry. He had 14 total touches, 7 of them being receptions, he had 14 total opportunities, 7 of them being targets, and only 8.1 fantasy points. So with him as kind of the sole guy, Ty Johnson was there as well, but being the clear lead back in that offense, he wasn't able to produce great in a home game against this New England team. Now you factor in the fact that James Robinson's on the team. He's had a bye week, an opportunity to increase his understanding of the offense, to increase his usage and development of his overall opportunities in this backfield. I think it's more of a 50-50 split than ever. J-Rob could potentially pull away with the backfield lead here. I do think that it's important noting that they gave up low-end capital to acquire him. So while it wasn't high-end capital that suggests he's the clear starter, it is still an investment that they made into him for the rest of the season, and they did so because they're trying to win games, get in the postseason, and make a run this year. Now, logically, do the Jets really have a strong chance to win the Super Bowl? Probably not, but this is a big step year for the team, and they're looking to continue pushing the needle in a positive direction. So what that means for me is bad news for Michael Carter's fantasy value. It is a tough matchup. New England holds opposing running backs below their weekly average throughout the season, and I just the other signs are there. So it's a situational, organizational thing for me. I'm just looking to stay away. He may not be a top 24 or even top 30 running back this week for that matter. Now, Naji Harris is more of a sit in shallower leagues this week. If you're playing in a 12-man or larger format, you're probably going to have to start him just based on the overall landscape. I do have him ranked as an RB3. The tiers and rankings episode will come out tomorrow, so if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell on. But for Naji taking on Cincinnati this week, this is a matchup where it's a classic example of the arrow pointed upward for Pittsburgh's offense after seeing what they did, winning by double digits against New Orleans last week, and I think they come crashing down and burn themselves pretty hard here. Cincinnati's another tough matchup, holding opposing running backs below their fantasy average in a per-game basis this season. Cincinnati's also coming off of a bye week. They have extra preparation for a bad offense. Their defense is very underrated as well, and Najee having a 99-yard game, still not cracking 100 yards yet this season, and not cracking the double-digit threshold. It's kind of funny that he barely missed my start threshold, or he barely made my sit threshold by 0.1 points, being 10 points, and half PPR being my threshold for start-sit episodes, especially sitting for the purposes of what Naji Harris has been the majority of this year. I'd be shocked to see him get there without a touchdown this week. So I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't expect the game script to play out the same way it did week one. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be trailing for 3/4 of the contest and trying to come back late in the game. I also don't think that Pittsburgh is going to control the tempo of this contest. I think it's going to be kind of an ugly, low-scoring game. No Jamar Chase in here. And I think that at the end of the day, we're going to see both of these teams struggle a little bit to move the chains, but more, pressingly, the Pittsburgh Steelers and their poor offensive situation. So my concerns with Naji Harris continue to prevail here. Of course, he did go back to the tent. Jalen Warren comes in every once in a while and makes some impressive plays, but not suggesting necessarily that he is taking over a concerning enough role in that offense. Kenyan Drake here, Baltimore at home taking on Carolina. The reason I am off Drake for this week is the Ravens expect to have Gus Bus Edwards back in the lineup for this game. That's important because the less of a lead role Kenyan Drake has here, the less valuable he is for teams. Now, he has been dynamite the last 2 games. Gus Edwards getting injured 2 weeks ago mid-contest, Drake coming in, balling out in his absence, and then on Monday Night Football against New Orleans a week prior, he came out and did really, really good things in that game without Gus in the lineup. So, again, they are expecting to have Edwards back for this contest. If Gus is active, I'm not starting either of them. If Gus is not, you can toss this take out the window and start Kenyan Drake if you need to in your leagues. It's not an easy matchup, but it is something that I do think is manageable enough to score starting lineup value, being 10 or more points in half PPR, as we just awkwardly talked through earlier in a poorly illustrated way. But for Kenyan Drake here, again, that concern is the other players in this offense. This is not a true workhorse style offense. They want to be a committee. They want to dice up and divvy up those carries and opportunities to other guys across the board. And if Edwards is there, that's my expectation. He also should get the goal line carries, which takes away a lot of ceiling value from Drake unless he makes a big run happen. So careful with Kenyan. Things could go south here based on the activity of other players. And then Devin Singletary here. I've bashed on him throughout the week. This is a player that doesn't necessarily have the label of being a weekly startable player, but after last week's game, his stock is certainly up. And he is a risky play every week. It's as simple as that. This team repeatedly shows you who they are and how they value Singletary in the run game. They repeatedly show you they don't have the confidence in him to tote the rock at a high level. He had 2 first-quarter touchdowns against Minnesota last week. They had the lead. They controlled the tempo of the game, but they stopped handing off the ball. They stopped rushing the ball consistently and allow teams like the Vikings to get back in the contest and to, at the end of the day, beat them. So for Devin here, he can get all the work in the world he wants to in any given quarter, but betting on the touchdown production that he has is so shaky and a risky thing to do because you never know when it's going to come or where it's coming from. So if I was a betting man, which of course in this sense we are, I'm betting against the guy who, like I said, had 2 first-quarter touchdowns and finished the game with 47 yards rushing. That's not cutting it. How do you get 2 touchdowns, 12 fantasy points in the first quarter of a game, and then finish with under 50 yards rushing as your team's lead running back and as a team that had the control of the game script for the majority of this contest? You had Minnesota in a hole, backed up, throwing on 4th and 18. It took the catch of the year to beat you and overcome you, But what are you doing? Hand the ball off, control the clock, control the tempo, the pace of the game. It was such a puzzling and baffling look for the Bills. And it's the consistent thing that we see from them here in terms of what they do on a weekly basis. So, again, I'm sorry, Buffalo fans. The Devin Singletary takes this week have been very negative towards the Bills. But it's just centered around the run game here has been very frustrating. I don't think Devin Singletary is a workhorse running back. If you have to, get someone else in there and get them running with the ball, not named Josh Allen. And you could take off and do some other things nicely. But at the end of the day, for Devin Singletary here, I am not trusting him. He's a risky starter every week. He's an RB3 for me, not someone I'm depending upon to consistently produce weekly lineup numbers. So the one thing that I think factored in early to having Singletary's extra success was being cautious with his elbow. But as soon as they saw him out there whipping that rock around and knew he could do it, they threw that concern out the window and just went back to old pass-happy mode. So Cleveland's a good matchup. They allow above average fantasy points production from opposing running backs, but not willing to, stake the fate of my fantasy week on Singletary being in my running back 2 slot. So there you guys have it. My 5 sits of the week: Daryl Henderson at New Orleans, Michael Carter at New England, Naji Harris at home against Cincinnati, Kenyan Drake at home against Carolina, and Devin Singletary at home against the Cleveland Browns. As always, your questions are welcome in the comment section below. Join our community Discord server. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow our other spaces here at Sizzle Fantasy Sports. I appreciate you guys for stopping by today, and I'll see you in a future episode. Peace out.